Hey Premiere Pros, it's Paul Murphy here, and today we're going to try and create a camera viewfinder effect. I'm going to try and do it as fast as possible. So the thing about creating a camera viewfinder effect is it's relatively straightforward and pretty simple to do in Premiere Pro. The only thing is it takes time, is you've got to create a lot of different icons with it. So the thing that I found interesting about making this video is I was thinking to myself, what is the most efficient, fast way to do this? And so I found a few little places here and there where we can speed things up. Now, if you don't have time to do that, I do have these templates available for purchase on my website. So I've got 5 different viewfinders that you can download there. But otherwise, let's take a look at what we're trying to create here. So I've got a finished version here, and as you can see, there are a few different elements we need to create. So first of all, we need to create the framing, and this includes the crosshairs in the middle. Then we also have a sort of flashing recording button up here. And then of course we have a battery indicator in the top right. And then finally we have some time code down the bottom. So we need to create all of these different elements. So let's just jump straight into it. I'm going to delete everything off my timeline here. And the first thing we want to do is we want to create a new rectangle. And this rectangle, I want the bottom right corner of it to actually be in the center of my frame. So before I do any kind of moving around, I'm just going to make sure I've got snapping turned on. So I'm going to select my program monitor and then go up to view. And here I want to make sure I have snap in program monitor turned on. And now if I move this, I'm going to make sure that that bottom right is perfectly in the center there. That looks good. Okay, now what I need to do is I want to create duplicates of this rectangle in every corner of my frame. And a very quick way to do that is to use the mirror effect. So I'm going to go down to effects and I want to search for mirror, and then I'll just drag this effect into my essential graphics panel. Now it's not doing anything at the moment because if I select the effect, I can see that the reflection center point is over here on the far right. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the reflection angle. So if I go over here to my effect controls and change the reflection angle to 90 degrees, well, now it's duplicated my shape at the bottom of the frame. Now I also want to mirror everything to the right as well. So to do that, I'm just going to grab another mirror effect, drag this above that other mirror effect. And what I want to do with this one instead is I'm going to go over to my reflection center over here in my effect controls. I want my reflection center to be half the width of my sequence. So my sequence is 1920, so I want this here to actually be 960. You can see now we've very quickly created 4 rectangles in each corner of our frame. And what's really good about working this way is now I can just resize one of these shapes and all of them will resize at the same time. So I don't actually want a fill here. I'm actually going to uncheck fill. And I'm going to turn on stroke. I think that's a pretty good stroke. And I'll just expand out this shape to the edges of the frame. And you can see we're very quickly getting something close to what we want in terms of the frame outline in this viewfinder. There are a few lines that I'm going to need to mask out here, and I can do that with a few other shapes. So I'm going to create some more shapes. I'll go over here and choose new rectangle. For this rectangle, I'll turn off the stroke, I'll turn on the fill, and just to make things easier to see, I'm going to make it a green fill. Although it doesn't matter what color you use. And the other thing to mention is that the shape is above my mirror effect. So I actually want these to be below the mirror effect. So the mirror is affecting this shape as well. And I'll just move this over to the side and I'll just start to resize it so that it covers the parts of the outline that I don't want to see. And now I'll just duplicate another shape. So I'll right click and choose duplicate, and I'll move this one up to the top here, and I think that looks pretty good. I'll just expand this side over here. Oh, I should also say this shape needs to be underneath the mirror effect as well, so I'll click and drag this shape down, and now it's affecting everything, and I think that's pretty good. Now we're covering up all the parts of the line that we don't want to see. And now to just get rid of those green shapes entirely, I'm just going to select both of them in my essential graphics. I'm going to go down to mask with shape. So I'll check this and I'll also tick invert. So now we're only seeing the parts of the layer below it. And we've very quickly created our frame outlines there, and we only used 3 shapes to do it. So I'm going to put those aside for a sec. I'm going to put all of these into their own group. So I'm going to select them and choose create group, it will put them all in their own folder, and I'll call this frame. And I'm also going to turn off visibility for this because I'm going to come back to it. Now, the next thing I think we'll do that we'll create is the record button. So I'm going to go over here and add a new ellipse. Now, this should be a perfect circle, but it's not. It's more of an oval. So to fix that, I'm going to go over to my width and height and change the height to the same as the width. So now we've got a perfect circle. I'll turn off the stroke and I'll turn on the fill, and I'll set this to a nice bright red. That's our flashing red dot there. And then I'll grab some text to go with this as well. So I'll add a new text layer and I'll type rec. Now this is probably the wrong font for this. I probably want something that is a sans serif font. Let's see if we've got something here that we can choose from. What's this one like? Yeah, I reckon that's close enough. And I'll just turn up the size of this. But of course, one of the things that we know about the flashing red button is that it should be flashing. And this is a really easy animation to create. You just need to go and get an effect that's called strobe light. And I'll drag that. You want to make sure that that's above the circle and below the text, because you don't want it affecting the text as well. And you'll notice that by default, it's sort of flashing white and then red, white and then red. But what we actually want to do is change that white to transparent pixels. So I'm going to select that effect in my essential graphics, and then I'm going to go over to my effect controls, and I want to change where it says strobe. At the moment it's set to operates on color only. I just want to change that to makes layer transparent. And that means instead of going to that white circle, it's going to go to transparent pixels instead. So there's our flash effect. Now, of course, this is too big at the moment, but we're going to come back to scaling this a little bit later. So for now, what I think I'll do is I'll just select all of these layers and I'll put them in their own group, and I'll just call this record button. Okay, and then next up, we will create our battery icon. So I'm going to turn off our record button, and to create the battery icon, what I'll do is I'm going to add a new rectangle, and I want this to be a little bit longer, maybe just like that. And I'm going to set the fill to white, and I also want these edges of the rectangle to be curved. So I'm going to go to these little dots that you see on each corner here and just drag them inwards. And when I do that, I get curved edges on my shape. And then what I want is a little bit of a gap here and then another stroke outside around this battery. So to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a stroke, and I'm going to set it to green. And then I'm going to turn the stroke width up like that. And then what I want to do is I want to add another stroke on top of this. So I'm going to go over to the plus icon here and add another stroke. I want this one to be white, and I'll just turn this up as well. So we've got that green outline there, but we're actually going to make that transparent. I'm just going to add another thing first because we don't want our battery at full power. So I want to mask out some of the battery as well. So to do that, I'm going to duplicate my layer and I'll turn off the stroke, and I'm going to set this to the same green that we had. So I'll just get the color picker and just choose that same green. And then I'm going to drag this across. Now, I don't actually want this rectangle to have curved edges as well. So to get rid of those curved edges, I'm just going to grab that circle and pull it back out to the edge. And now we've got straight edges again. And then one other thing I need to add to this battery is like a little white tip at the end. And I'm going to do that by duplicating this shape that I've just created. So I'll click duplicate, and I'm going to set this to white, and I'll just move this out past the battery, and I'll adjust the height as well. And so now we've got our little battery icon. Of course, we do need to knock that green out and make it transparent. So to do that, we're actually going to use an effect. We're going to use the Ultra key effect. And so I'll just drag that above those shapes. And with that effect selected, I'm just going to go over to where it says key color in the effect controls, and I'll choose the color picker, and I'll just pick that green. And now those pixels are made transparent. And then of course I'll put these in their own group as well. So we'll call this battery. And the thing I want to do is I want to be able to resize this graphic from the far right corner. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of my shapes within this group. I can't select any effects when I do this. And I'm going to go down to where it says align. And I want to choose, rather than align to video frame, which will align each individual shape to the video frame, I want to choose align to video frame as group. That's going to make sure all those shapes stay relative to each other. And then with that selected, I'm going to align to the top, and I'm going to align to the right. Now, the last thing I need to do here is I'm going to select this group, and I'm going to go and grab the anchor point, and push this up to the top right edge. I could probably do this quickly just by typing in 1920. And that's going to make sure that when I start resizing this group, that everything's going to move from the far right corner. And I might just do that now. So I'll turn on my frame, and then with the battery group selected, I'm going to move this to where I want to resize it, probably about there. And then I'll adjust the scale, and you can see all of these adjust at the same time, and probably something like that looks about right. And then I'll do the same thing with the record button. So I'll turn on the record button, and I want to select all of the layers except for the effect layers. So I'm going to hold down the Command or Control key to do that, to make sure that both of these are selected. And then I want to, with align to video frame as group turned on, I'm going to align to the left and align to the top. Then I'll select my record button group, and I want that anchor point to start up here in the top left. And now I'll move that entire group round about to where I want it here, and I'll adjust the scale of everything. Probably want it to be round about the same size as the battery, like that. And that looks pretty good. Okay, so the last thing we need to do is we need to add some time code to this. And this is really easy to do because we have the time code and metadata effect. So I'm just going to select this in the effects panel and just drop this onto my graphics clip. Here it is up in the essential graphics, and you can see I've already got time code that's automatically running here. I can go over to the effect controls and make all kinds of changes to this here in terms of where I want it to start counting from, or what frame rate I want it to count at. Probably the one thing you want to change here is you want to go over to the opacity and set this to 0, because otherwise you'll have like a dark gray outline behind the time code. So this will get rid of that. And the last thing I would recommend doing, and just to show you why we would do it, is if I was to put some footage underneath this, so I'll grab that footage that I had before, you'll notice that in areas where it's quite white, you can't even see the viewfinder, so you kind of lose the effect of the graphic. I would recommend going to your effects panel and just getting the drop shadow effect. And I'll grab that, and I'm going to drag that at the very top of my graphic, and that means it gets applied to everything underneath it. And so now even in areas where it's white, we can see where that graphic is. And there you go, we have very quickly created our own reusable camera viewfinder. Hey, thanks for watching. I hope you found this video useful, and if you did, please like and subscribe, and maybe check out some of these other videos I made.